All right, you're listening to the Royal Rant. I'm Ryan.
I'm Tim.
We have a super special guest, a great treat for everybody out there. A Southern California musical sports legend, I would say.
I would
You
say.
what? Somebody who's worked for the LA Kings, LA Dodgers, LA Lakers, best of all, LA Lasers. So if you're out there, kids, look that one up. We'll have to cover this one. I don't know if the Kings fans are going to like it. Also, the San Jose Sharks, Phoenix Coyotes. Winter and Summer Olympic Games. Are you serious? And also participated in EA Sports NHL 94, probably the greatest one of the franchise,
Yeah, I agree.
95 and 96. Incredible. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dieter Ruehle.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Tim,
Thanks for being on.
you want to start out with a question?
Yeah, so I kind of the Lasers are kind of near and dear to me. I actually played a soccer game there before one of their games when I was a kid. It was a huge deal. And is it true you started working those games when you were 15?
Yeah,
That's amazing. How did you get started with that?
that's true. Well, I was writing letters to the forum to the teams there when I was a kid, obviously. And then the Lasers had the opening and they said, yeah, we're interested. And I don't remember exactly the auditioning process, but
Oh
um,
wow.
yeah, I was 15 and my mom would drive me to games. And in those days, it was just all organ. There was no video board, there were no hosts. Um, so that's kind of how I got my foot in the door at the forum. And then
Hmm.
5 years later, the Kings were looking to make a change. Um, and then, so they hired me in 1989.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And did you I mean, was this something that you envisioned yourself doing? I mean, it must have been tough down there and go to audition and everything. Is this it was were you nervous about it or you just thinking like if it happens, it happens?
Yeah, I remember the Kings auditioning me the summer of '89. I remember going down to the forum and playing in the empty building and I don't have any idea who else I auditioned against, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
But I got a taste of it when I was 12 years old. I got to play at part of a Kings game. It was November 19th, 1980. The Kings played the Winnipeg Jets, and it was part of a sports fantasy for Channel 7. And I wrote them a letter, said, I want to play hockey with the Kings, but if that's not possible, can I play the organ at a game? And they went with that idea. And I remember it was so weird. I was 12, but there's this huge delay. It's like when you press a key down, you don't hear yourself right away.
Yeah.
And that was really, really hard. But I still had such a great time. And I loved it before doing the sports fantasy, meaning I loved organ at games. And doing the sports fantasy just made me love it even more. So then I started writing letters. Every summer, it would be Lakers, Kings, and then every winter I write to the Dodgers. If you ever have an opening, I was like a 13, 14-year-old kid, you
That's
know.
so cool.
But I pursued that. I never really pursued being in a band or maybe the more traditional type of things a musician might want to do.
Yeah.
For me, it was always like music and sports. And in those days, it
Hmm.
was organ, and I had taken piano lessons, and I was like, I really would love to do this, but I didn't really see like getting to do all the things I've done. I would have had no idea I'd ever get to do an Olympics, let alone six, you know.
Oh,
So it's been pretty been a fun ride so far.
That's
no, that sounds
fantastic.
like
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
It's a great lesson for people listening out there. It's like, hey, you got
I
to knock
know,
on
right?
doors, right? You want to do
Yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
you have to make things happen, right?
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. You have to make them happen for sure.
So you mentioned how, when you transitioned from at the time when there was just organ, now you've
Yeah.
got like video boards and hosts. And my question for you is, can you actually enjoy the games?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's evolved, and I think it's evolved in a good way. Like we've added things. It's like you don't add by subtraction. Like when new players come on, you don't get rid of one player. Just you bring on new players, and so maybe it's not a great analogy, but what I'm trying to say is like it's grown. Like the options for entertainment have grown. Um, like I remember, like I said, we didn't have a video board. All we had was the public address announcer and the organ, and you could actually smoke cigarettes in the forum. And I remember during intermissions, you'd see a cloud of smoke just hovering over the ice, you know?
I remember that.
And
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah, like nowadays, you're like, what? You could really do that? But then, we couldn't do anything without a video board. Like you couldn't see replays, let alone fans couldn't see themselves being weird, right? So once we got a video board up at the forum, then like the sky's the limit. You can show highlights and replays, and you can show the fans having a good time, and then they introduced pre-recorded music, which I remember that happened during my second year, which was 1990, 91. Because up until then, it was just silence when doors opened, and then I mean you'd hear organ only and public address announcer. Um, and then my second year, the Kings were like, we want to introduce pre-recorded music. And so they gave me a tape deck to play cassettes.
Wow.
It was really, it was weird to play that first song in the first period of that first game, my second year. It was like a Billy Idol track. And I remember fans would turn up and look at me like, what's that? It was so weird to hear a
Yeah.
voice that wasn't the public address announcer. It was somebody singing and it wasn't the national anthem. It was just really weird. Probably hard to imagine. I'm trying to paint the picture though. Like it was just all organ for, I guess, going back to the beginning.
Hmm.
And so now we're obviously with it's grown a lot since I started.
So between, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL, is there a sport that's maybe more difficult to work as the organist than another one, or?
No, I think they're like apples and oranges. Like there's just different challenges for each of them, you know. Um, you just have to focus, and I have to pay attention
Hmm.
and prepare, um, but I love what I do, and I feel like it's just carrying on a tradition that, when I was a kid, that's all you heard.
Hmm.
I'm glad that, um, it's still around, obviously. But yeah, it's part of like when you go to like a college football game or college basketball game, you're going to hear marching band, right? And
Hmm.
that's been going on. And sure, the technology is there where we don't have to have live musicians. We could press a button, but then you don't have that same feel.
Hmm.
And I think that that's the one of the benefits to it of whether it's the marching bands or the organists and sports, so that hopefully they're adding a presence, a feel, and then reacting maybe in some subtle ways to what's happening on the field or on the ice.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Tim, do you have another question?
Yeah, so I know like you mentioned like being prepared for games and everything. Do you still get nervous doing it? I mean, I think I've been listening. I've been watching the Kings game probably since about the time you started doing it. I've never heard you miss a note or anything. Like, could you play that stuff in your sleep, if you had to?
well, I'm glad you haven't heard me mess up. The thing is, it's like when you're playing live,
Yeah.
mistakes happen,
Hmm.
and I get nervous probably during like a little nervous during the national anthems,
Hmm.
because all the attention is on you with the singer or me with the
Hmm.
singer. And then I might get a little nervous if I'm playing something I never played before and I haven't quite like I'm not totally comfortable with it yet. Um, but I'm used to it now. I'm used to playing at games and I love it. And it just as long as you're prepared, then then I probably not wouldn't be as nervous. I'm not as nervous as if I wasn't prepared, then I'd probably be really, really super nervous.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like like for a test. Like if you prepare for a
Hmm.
test, you go in there, you know the material, then you probably wouldn't be as nervous if like you didn't know or you didn't know what to expect. So I guess, yeah.
Do you have
Yeah.
time to rehearse with the anthem singers that come in? Because you're kind of dealing with a lot of different singers.
Yeah. Yeah. For a 7:30 game, doors open at 6. So we have anthem rehearsal around 5-ish. Um, and with the Kings recently, it's been Hannah Davey, but we still rehearse.
Hmm.
And then there have been a few other singers throughout the season so far this year. And then, we rehearse. I don't accompany all of them. Some of them don't want it, don't want
Right.
the organ accompaniment. So we never force them. It's up to them. Um, but we also rehearse the entire show from start to end, meaning like when the guys are introduced, when they take the ice, and then some of the contests with the hosts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we rehearse that stuff. We even do a horn check when I trigger the goal
Hmm.
horn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's actual um, train horns that are up in the rafters, and I have like a trigger switch that's attached to the bottom of the organ. And so, every day around 3:30 ish, we'll do like a horn check, do a sound check, do mic check. We have to check the referee mics, make sure they're working. Um, and then yeah, it's full on rehearsal.
Yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts. That's why I was wondering if you actually could enjoy the games, because it seems like there's a lot going on
Well,
for
it's funny you mention that
planning.
because I'm watching the game and I need to like pay attention for when there's a penalty and when there's a goal, etc. So I think I'm enjoying the game, but then if you ask me at the end of the game who scored, I'm like, I don't know who scored. You know, 'Cause I'm
Yeah,
just
that's
so
what I was
focused on
thinking.
what's next, and then Trevor's got
Mhm.
the announcement coming up next, and I'll hear that in the headset. But I'm always thinking ahead, what do I do with the next whistle, or what are we doing game entertainment wise? Like the next TV timeout, what are we doing? Or so there's a lot of thinking happening or thinking ahead.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so I'm enjoying the game, but I'm not able to like sit back without a care in the world because I have
Exactly.
a lot of responsibilities. So
Mhm.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah, if you forget to hit the goal horn, then
Well, that, yeah, that hasn't happened.
that could be a real problem.
I might be a little bit late. Like if I happen to look down for a second, oh, he scored. Like, oh, you know, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I mean, you've been a part of a lot of championship teams, and I mean, do you have any memories of, some of the really huge games that you've seen, that you've worked doing the Lakers, Dodgers, and Kings?
Yeah, yeah. I'll start with the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver. And the gold medal game was USA against Canada. And Sidney Crosby got the winning goal in overtime for Team Canada.
Hmm.
And I remember that very well because being in Canada, in Vancouver, and hockey's just the ultimate sport there. And everybody was on pins and needles because the USA had tied the game late in the third period. So there's a
Hmm.
full intermission. Everybody's stressed out. And it was like a Hollywood ending with the home team winning like that with Sidney Crosby scoring. And then some other memories, of course, are like Alec Martinez, winning in 2014. And I didn't realize how long I held the goal horn. It was just because that was also a very tense situation. It was double overtime. And
Exactly.
I think if we would have lost, we would have had to go back to New York.
Hmm.
It was just, and so I didn't realize how long I held the horn when Martinez scored. And then I guess with the other sports, like the 2010 NBA Finals, it was the Lakers and the Celtics. It was game 7 here at home in LA and also very tense. And then when you win, everybody's just so happy. Like with the World Series, like when the Dodgers just won here in 2024, even though it was in Yankee Stadium, we had a Kings game that night. And we just so happened to be at intermission during the end of the World Series game. So we put it on the board and everybody was just so happy. And that really stands out with our 2 Stanley Cups. It's like we were fortunate enough to win both games at home, and everybody is just so happy. everybody, like down to
Hmm.
the staff that works in the arena, the staff that works for the Kings, all the fans, players, obviously. That's the thing that stands out about championships. Is like when I first mentioned the Team Canada win. It's like when you win a championship, there's so much work that goes into it, and to just to be part of it, to witness it, I feel fortunate for that. And what stands out most is the joy in all of them. It doesn't matter the sport, it's just there's just so much positive energy and people from it's such a diverse crowd too, in whatever
Hmm.
sport, but they all come together in this one bond, right, with the championship. So
Yeah, that's a great point about the Winter Olympics. I mean, that's a whole country, right? I mean, it's,
yeah,
when a LA team wins, it's more of a LA Southern California experience. But it's true that I remember watching that gold medal game, and I
Yeah,
was
me
hoping
too.
that Team USA would win, but
Mhm.
um, I didn't think they would. I just kind of felt like, boy, and also I would have felt bad for Canada. I think maybe being that it was in Vancouver, and knowing that every single Canadian was watching that, and
yeah,
I mean, not that it's bad to have a silver, but they kind of expect to have the gold, and
Mhm.
but yeah, I could see that was probably a very loud building when that goal went in from
yeah,
Crosby's stick.
yeah, yeah,
And speaking of loud buildings, I mean, when Freddie Freeman hit that walk-off grand slam, I mean, was that one of the louder times that
yeah,
you experienced
yeah.
at Dodger Stadium? Because I mean, just on TV, it just seemed incredible.
It really was. Yeah. We I'm at the end of the press box, which the press box is like situated built on like on an overhang. Like if you're familiar with Dodger Stadium, there's the
Hmm.
lower two levels, then there's reserve level, but we're like at the in that middle section that shoots out over the Loge level. And when Freeman hit the home run, because the people above us were just must have been jumping up and down. We were literally just like shaking up and down like it was pretty and it was so loud. It was
Yeah.
such a loud roar, you know.
I was, yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm sure you realize it at the time, but I mean, that's going to go down as one of the most, iconic home runs in Dodgers history, along with Kurt Gibson,
Yeah,
and maybe just even beyond the Dodgers, just as a World Series game.
yeah,
I mean, just incredible stuff. Yeah, I can
yeah,
remember being in Dodger Stadium in 1980, and I think it was the end of the regular season. And that was back when the Astros were in the NL West,
yep,
and the Dodgers were a game behind, so they had to win to force a playoff.
yeah,
And Joe Ferguson hit a walk-off home run.
yeah.
And I still remember, I mean, that place, I mean, it felt like there was an earthquake. I mean, and people stayed I mean, people didn't want to leave the stadium.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
that wasn't even winning the World Series. That was just that kept them alive.
Yeah, yeah, but that's a great memory that you have. You're always going to have that. And
Yeah.
I think that's the great thing with sports is that these moments happen and they're very special. But when you're there, you're always going to have that memory. And that series you talked about, I didn't get to go to that, but I remember seeing highlights, and it was a big deal. I mean, yeah, end of the season and the Ferguson home run.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned that you originally wrote into ABC because you wanted to play for the Kings, right? And they said, "Hey, how
Well,
about playing
yeah,
home instead?"
it was a sports fantasy thing, and
Uh-huh.
they had a guy, just a random guy, play football with the Rams.
Okay.
I was watching that. I was like, oh, cool. I'll write them a letter because maybe I could play hockey with the Kings because it was hockey season, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever play hockey growing
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, I've played off and on over the years. I've most recently I played over the summer a little bit. They call it stick time.
Hmm.
Go to a local rink. You just have you can just skate on the ice with sticks and pucks, and it's a good little workout. I'm not the greatest skater,
Hmm.
I to this day, I definitely could use some help from Daryl Evans or he's a great skater. But I'm okay. I can get around um, but yeah, I never wasn't a great skate, wasn't a good enough skater to keep at it for sure.
Well, I mean, especially at that time, growing up in Southern California, it wasn't really a lot of opportunities
No.
to play hockey, I feel like. Because I remember kind of be in the same situation. I liked hockey,
Yeah.
very young, but they're really, like out in Riverside, there wasn't really opportunities to play ice hockey. I mean, and when you're out like with your stick, your plastic puck and plastic stick out in the driveway,
Yeah.
you thought, what is
Yeah.
this kid's
That
problem?
was it. That was it. Street hockey with the orange puck,
Exactly. And now I
or even
feel
a
like
tennis ball. Yeah.
there are a lot of opportunities for kids, I think, to play in Southern California legitimately, which is,
I'm sure you noticed the change when Gretzky got here.
hmm
Mm.
yeah, I mean, that was a huge leap forward. And now, you've got some really good players that are, Southern California kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
I mean,
No,
you would have
It
thought
doesn't
that.
require like a cold climate. You can still do it even though it doesn't snow outside. It's not cold enough to make a rink in your backyard, but there's enough options where, you can go to rinks. There's more rinks now than when we were kids.
Yeah, I remember I used to give my parents a hard time about like, hey, how come we can't live in Minnesota, And they were kind of like, what is this kid who doesn't want to live in California? Like,
Yeah.
what do we do wrong with this
Yeah.
weirdo? He wants to live in Minnesota so he can play hockey. You got any questions, Tim?
well, I was interested like in the pre-recorded music. Do you have a say in like what's selected? Is that something you choose? Is it something the organization chooses for the Kings or
No, I mean like we also have DJ Vic one. So
Mm,
during the games, the two of us are picking what we're playing, with a few exceptions. Like the goal music is there. Um,
mm,
the music for when they take the ice is there. It's like given to us. Um, but for the random whistle breaks, like I handle all of the in-game music. Whereas then we get to the three TV timeouts, it'll be DJ Vic one, and he also handles like the warm-ups, the music for warm-ups when the guys come out to warm up and intermissions. Although I do play on the organs during some intermissions. Um, but fortunately, we're not spoon-fed or we're not like micromanaged. Oh, because it's been there, done that. That's happened in the past, and it's just like, well, here, why don't you put a high school kid to do this job then? It's like part of
mm,
the thing is like what we're bringing is like our experience and like what we think fits, especially in the LA market,
mhm, mhm.
um, and stuff that flows, um, and just a variety of music, really. But yeah,
That's cool. And I'm kind of interested too, like what kind of music do you like to listen to? Like,
well, right now I'm
yeah.
actually really, really I love all sorts of music, but right now I just finished reading the book called Brothers by Alex Van Halen,
Oh, awesome.
and yeah,
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 we're
and
both
so.
big Van Halen fans.
Me too. Me too. And so currently in the car, I've got some Van Halen going. Uh, but yeah, it's a really interesting story. So, um, but yeah, my first ever record was like when I was like a preteen or a teenager. The first record I bought was a Van Halen album, and so I love Van Halen. Um, but I also love Depeche Mode,
Mhm.
and I love Daft Punk or Fatboy Slim or you know there's some Led Zeppelin tracks I love. It's just all over the place, my musical preferences.
So, you mentioned pre-recorded music and stuff. I was thinking
Yeah,
about, like the walk-up music that goes on in Major League Baseball now.
yeah,
I can remember, I'm old enough to remember that was not a thing, right?
right,
And I
right.
don't, I'm trying to remember when I first noticed that. It seemed like when Gagne was the closer for the Dodgers, he would come out to Welcome to the Jungle. So it seemed like it started with closers and then kind of worked its way to batters. Is that kind of how it went?
I'm not sure exactly. Like, I think each stadium was different. I do know at Dodger Stadium, they started playing pre-recorded music. I think it was 1998, so several years after the Kings did. Um, and prior to that point, it was all organ. As
Hmm.
far as the batter music, I do believe it was 99
Okay.
or 2000,
That
somewhere
kind
in
of
there.
tracks, it seems like. And do you, I mean, I guess every player has to have walk-up music. I mean, and are you involved in like helping them find
Not
some?
much. No, no, the
Somebody doesn't
players
know what they
shoot their
want.
requests right up to at Dodger Stadium, we have DJ Severe. And so the players will get their requests sent to Dodgers PR, who gives the request to directly to DJ Severe, and he'll find the music and cue it and make sure it's, a clean radio edit. Um, and then, then the players also request the exact like starting point where they want the songs to start. And now, over the last couple of years, we have less time to play those songs because there's the pitch clocks now.
Oh, that's right. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to be out like with if the clock is starting at 15 and we have to be out at 12. So you're only going to get 3 seconds if you start at 15.
Right.
But the trick is to start before the clock starts, you know?
No, I mean, it's cool. I think it's added a lot to the experience, I think. I mean,
Mhm.
baseball has kind of always been one of the sports that's kind of slow to, change but that's probably a thing that's kind of cool that they're doing.
I
So,
think yeah, it's a part of if you don't mind my interrupting there, just like
no.
part of evolution. Like
Mhm.
things were different in the 60s and they're different in the 70s. And here we are today, and who would have thought we'd have a pitch clock, right? But we do, and years ago, who would have thought we'd have like DJs and
Hmm.
video boards, right? And
Right.
so things just keep evolving and
Yeah, I think it was that pitch clock probably made it harder for you, but it probably has been beneficial for the game, probably.
it's weird though. On one hand, harder for me that I'll have less time and I've got to keep one eye on the clock. But on the other hand, it's good for me and that I can get home earlier, you know?
Right, right,
You
right.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I mean, you don't have those 4-hour marathon games anymore, unless it's like a playoff game that goes deep in
yeah,
extra innings or something.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's really like
yeah,
it's about 2.5 hours,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think, maybe
It
three.
is. The
Kind
last
of
couple of
like
years,
watching a
around
long movie.
yeah, but then it's weird when the game goes 3 hours, but we think, oh, this is the way it used to be,
Yeah,
you know?
just on a random Wednesday,
Yeah, right.
game ends at 10:30 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, so what we do on this podcast sometimes we play a little game called Only One Shall Remain. Okay, so I'll usually give Tim three things, and he can
Okay.
only pick one, and the other two just disappear from the time and space continuum and cease to exist.
Okay.
So we're gonna
All right.
give you one, okay? You ready?
So what you're gonna give
I'm gonna
me?
give you three. This time, because you're a musician, we're gonna give you three bands,
Okay.
and you can only pick one of the three. Okay.
As far as a preference or as far as like,
In the band that you would wish to keep. The other
okay.
two will cease to exist as we know.
Okay.
They will
All
be
right.
scrubbed from history and time.
Oh,
Okay, here we go.
okay.
Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
I know it's
Wow. Wow. That's I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I can't. I don't have the
you can't do it.
I can't do it. I'm not authorized to.
You're afraid it'll get back to Ozzy or something?
Ah. No, but
Robert Plant will find out.
no, it's just that's hard to. I don't think I can do that. That's I'm just yeah, no.
All right, what about you, Tim? Led
I
Zeppelin,
just,
Black
I just,
Sabbath, Deep Purple.
I like Black Sabbath so much. I don't, yeah, I would pick them for sure. I
So
just,
no Led Zeppelin.
no,
Cease
I'm
to
more
exist.
Black Sabbath. Yeah,
No Deep Purple.
I love, just, the riffs they came up with and Bill Ward's drumming. Like I never really get tired of listening to that stuff.
They kind of set the blueprint for
Yeah,
heavy metal as we know it, right? So if they cease to exist, I don't know if we'd even have that.
that's true.
I thought Dieter might pick Deep Purple because of John Lord's keyboard
Yeah.
playing, maybe.
Yeah. And I do play I've been playing Hush recently.
Yeah.
But I was just reading about Black Sabbath in the Van Halen book, and I didn't know that Van Halen opened for Sabbath on
Hmm.
Black Sabbath's very final tour, and they were huge fans. Van Halen was a huge fan of Black Sabbath, and they hung out with Ozzy. It's really cool, one of the cool parts of the book. Um,
Yeah, I'd like to read that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
me
saw
too.
some excerpts of it, and
yeah,
yeah, I read something the other day, I think, where Tony Iommi was talking about how great Eddie Van Halen was on that tour, and how respectful he was, I guess, towards Black Sabbath and things. So, which is kind of cool because sometimes you hear, things that go the other way, you know. But that's great. Well, that's okay. We won't hold it against you. I guess it would be a shame if you had sent Led Zeppelin, made Led Zeppelin disappear, or Deep Purple.
You
Well,
know, hearing Unchained at Crypto, like a not huge sound system, I was like, man, it's still like I get goosebumps every time I hear it when I'm there, and I'm like, it's could this be like how it would have been to see Van Halen like back in the 80s, like just the sound, it's so crazy. I
yeah,
still love it.
yeah. Me too. It never gets old. But I think
that is an
Mhm.
incredible track. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's one of the things with music in general. And there's so many songs that people love that just will never really like expire. Like
Hmm.
you're gonna love them, in 10 days, and you'll love them in 10 years, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I
For
think
sure.
I read something that part of the reason why Unchained just has that, just that awesome riff is because Eddie Van Halen was pissed off at his producer or something. Well, it worked. Maybe the producer did that on purpose to get him to come up with that epic opening to Unchained. But yeah,
Yeah.
whatever it takes, it definitely worked. Well, thank you so much for talking to us, Dieter. Tim, you have any final thoughts?
No, this has just been awesome. It
Yeah, I
was
think
a
it's
real pleasure. Learned a lot. It was cool.
learned a lot. And as we usually close out this podcast with Go Kings Go.
Go Kings, go.
Go Kings, go.
All right.
Yeah.